Hi. In the previous session, we saw the very basics of Hive. In this session, we'll do the following. As you can see from the slide, what I'm going to cover here is we are going to look at Hive databases and tables. We'll look at some basic Hive queries, then the different kinds of data types that Hive supports. We'll have a look at two data sets and how to join these data sets. Afterwards, we'll do a quick look into all the built-in functions that Hive supports. Now, the last point, it says running Hive queries on shell. Now we wouldn't do it completely separately, but what I would be doing is, as and when I show a concept, we'll do those exercises. Okay. Before we start, I would like to uh, I'd like to do a brief recap of what we did last time. Okay, so what we did last time was we did some Hive basics. Then we looked at the various components, the architecture of Hive. In this, we saw what is a metastore. Then we also saw where the data is stored, which is basically the warehouse folder. Okay, and then I explained to you how what Cloudera Quick Start virtual machine is. I hope we are all clear with all of these things now. Making that as a base, we'll start this session. Okay, so let's go further. Right, creating databases. Now, I also would like to inform you that I've created a few script files, not a few script files, a few data files, which is some dummy data to demonstrate concepts. Okay, now this will be provided along with this video. Also, what I've done is I've created a file called scripts. In this, I have copied all the commands that I'm going to use during this session, and what you could do is you can just copy and paste these commands in your own environment and see if they work. Okay, so even this will be provided. I'll explain you what the data files are, then I'll also show you the script file. Okay, so that is how we are going to progress, right? Okay, now let's go to the Cloudera Quick Start virtual machine. Okay, so I booted this up, right? Obviously, I'm going to use Genie, and I'm going to use this terminal. As you can see, I am in module 2 folder under the in the local file system, and what I've done is I've pasted all these files. Okay, so I've got a few files here. I got emp.dat, department.dat, then I've got the other files, customer struct.dat. I'll explain each and every file to you before we do any kind of hands-on on that one. And this is a script file. So here is a scripts file, right? So I'm going to increase the font for you. Now, if you look at the script files, I pasted in all the scripts that I'm going to run today. Okay, and these commands you can use for your references and things like that. Okay, so what's the first thing that we do? The moment we get into, we have to get into Hive. Okay, so what's the command? Hive. Right. Now let's have a look at the slide. The first thing that we're going to cover today is create a database and observe the warehouse and the metastore, what happens in there. This metastore will view through Hive, the browser. Okay, Hive environment. Now we'll have a look at few commands of how to create a database and stuff like that. Okay, so let's go and get cracking. Right, now the first command that I'll use is show databases. Now the moment I do show databases, it will show you only one database, which is the default database. Now what I also want you to do is click on this browser and go to this shortcut called Hive, which is configured for you already. All right. Now, if this asks for a username password, it is Cloudera again. Okay. So username and password for this Hive is Cloudera. Now, what next you need to do is you scroll on these little icons, and then you click on Metastore Manager. Right? So this Metastore Manager, this is obviously, you might have guessed that this is a web application. This Hive browser is a web application which sits on top of the HDFS. Now what it's also doing is it's trying to retrieve the information from the RDBMS that was configured as a metastore for Hive. Okay, so here you see you just have one database. So if you click on databases, you just have one default database. Okay, right. So we saw from a Hive, and we also saw from the command line what are the various databases available. Now what we do is I'm deliberately showing you the scripts because you need to know what we are going to do, and that will be in that order only. All right. So let's create a database called stocks. Okay. Now stocks database is created. Let's see show databases. Right. So you have default and you have stocks. Now you want to use stocks database and not the default database. Now before that, I'd just quickly like to show what has happened inside the warehouse. Okay, and inside this Hive. So if you refresh this, you can see stocks database, and you click stocks database, there is nothing in there. Okay, in that database there are no schema or anything in there, right? So click on another tab here, right, and let's go to the name node. We want to see what's happening inside the HDFS system. Okay, so click on directory user. We need to navigate to Hive, and under Hive warehouse. So what happens under warehouse? Under warehouse there is a folder called stocks.db created. Every table or anything that we create will fall under stocks.db henceforth. Okay, so that is how the warehouse folder is affected. So a .db is attached. A new folder called stocks.db is attached to that. Okay, we saw in our previous session when we created a table called words, a folder called words was created, and there you can see that word folder is still there. Okay, and this has got data inside of it. Okay, so now if I want to use stocks database and not the default database, now how do I know what database this one is, and which database I am in? So for that I have to at the shell prompt, I need to somehow know what kind of database I'm using. Okay, so for that you need to set up a shell variable. So I can say set environment. You can say set, there is an environment variable. Okay, so what you can do is you set this environment variable. Say set hive dot command line dot print dot current dot db is equal to true. So the moment you do that, it shows you the current database. So I'll say use stocks. Right. Well, it didn't do for some reason. I'll do it again. Set hive.cl current current. That was a spelling mistake. Okay. So there you go. So we are into stocks. Now if I want to use stocks, I'll use stocks. Now I want to use default. So I'll say use default. So that gives me a pretty much a better idea of what kind of database I am in. Okay, so that's set hive.cli.print.currentDB is equal to true, means print the current database on the command line. Now if you want this to be set implicitly, you have to go to the hive.rc file in the configuration and set this environment. So whenever your Hive boots up, you'll get this by default, whatever database you are in. Okay, right. Now I created stocks database. Now I want to get some information about it. So I'll say describe database stocks. So if you look at that stocks database, and this is the meta folder, not the meta folder, sorry, this is the data folder where it is located. I showed this to you already when we used the browser, and I said under warehouse a stocks DB would be created. Okay, so you know the location of this particular database. Okay, so let's say uh, describe database default. So where does it go? If you see default database, Hive database, it all the data will be created under warehouse. So a folder for data will be created under warehouse. Okay. Now there is another option called create database if not exists. You can do that as well. Now if you want to drop a database, okay, so I'll say drop database stocks. I just want to drop it. So it has been dropped. Now show databases will list you all the databases again. So only default exists. Okay. So to keep things clear, we'll work under simple. So not clear. To keep things simple, we'll work under default database. Okay. So let's clear this. Okay. Right. So we had a look at the first one. So we saw a few commands how you can do it. Now, when you create a database, you can also provide information like comment, etc. Alright. So please have a look at the manual and see how you can write a comment when you create a database. Alright. So what we did in this session, I showed you the warehouse folder. What happens in the warehouse folder? I also showed you in the Hive Metastore Manager that you can have stocks and how there are no tables in there right now. Okay, because I dropped the stocks database. All right. Okay. Let's move on. Okay. The next thing that we'll do is we'll look at this create a table. We saw the basic of creating a table before, and we'll get a little bit further into it. Now it wouldn't be a completely advanced thing, but I'll show you a couple of things for you to get a good idea of how to create tables and how to alter a table, how to drop a table, and how to view some meta information. Now meta information is quite important. The reason being, it tells you what kind of table is that. There are two different kinds of tables. Okay, one is a managed table and one is an external table. Uh, I'll I'll briefly explain you what a managed table is. Okay, it will just kickstart your thought process before we get into our next video session, and in that session we'll uh, do a deeper dive into what a managed table is and what an external table is. Okay, so for now let's create some tables. Right. Okay, so if you look at the script file that I created, you can. Okay, so before we create a table, I would like to show you a data file. Now this is just a simple data file that I created by hand. It was a little program that generates me data. So here you have, this is department.dat file. Okay, now we are going to create a table for this particular data. One is department number. Okay, here now even though it says limited and corporation, it sounds like a company name, but let's assume it's a department name. Okay, and this number 200, it's a region ID, and this is the place where this department is located. So it is spread all over the globe. You can see different countries, Mauritius, etc. So we need to create a table for this kind of a file. All right. So how do we create it? First and foremost, we need to understand that this is a text file, and it is terminated by a /n or a carriage return. Okay, and every line is delimit in every line, every token or every single string is delimited by a comma. So keeping that in mind, we create a table. Right. So how do we create a table? what's happened? Right. So I'll say create table department. Okay. And in this department, now what do I have here? Let me look at the data. So what do I have here? So this is an int, this a string, this an int, and this a string. So I need 4 columns. Okay. So that's what I'll do. Say department number is an int, department name is a string, region ID is an int, and country is a string. Now, is that it? No. We need to instruct Hive that okay, this is a table, and you need to parse a particular file. So what next? It says row format delimited. Okay, it means delimited. Take every line as a row. Okay, and the default delimiter is /n. Now the next line should be fields terminated by comma. So that's a simple table. We are not doing anything else. So that has created a table. Now I'll say show tables. It has to show me that it has got department in there, right? So let's look at the Hive Metastore Manager, right? And let's do a refresh, resend. Okay. So obviously it has to load a bit slow. Metastore Manager. For some reason it's not showing me a table, but it's in there. Maybe my system's not responding properly. Okay. So there you go. Department was created, right? So under warehouse, department was created. So I have 2 tables, department and words. Okay. So I need to look at if when I said show tables, department table is definitely created. Okay. And we already had words there. Now, as we saw in our previous session, when we create a table, the data location, now this department is just a it is just meta information, schema information, and this is stored in the Metastore Manager. Okay. It also creates a folder called department, which has got the same name as the table under the warehouse directory. So if you look at the warehouse directory here, so warehouse, a department folder was created. Now obviously there is no data in there, so nothing would happen, right? Now let's do a describe on this table. Let's say describe dpt. Now when you did a describe department, okay, don't worry, all these commands are in the script file. It gave you information, it gave you meta information, it gave you schema information. Department number int, dname string, region ID int, country string. Okay, so these are simple data types that Hive supports. Okay, we in the next session, in the next slide, in the next few slides, we look at complex data types. But for now, to keep things simple, we are just looking at simple data types. Okay, so this is the description. All right. Now I want to see some more information about this table. Now this table, okay, fine. I just get this. This is schema. I need to see something more. So I'll say describe extended. Extended is keyword, and I'll say department. Now when I do describe extended department, it gives me more information about the table. So here you go, it says table name default, db name default, okay, and created time, all of this. Now you can write some comments. The full syntax, I'll show you a link on Hive, which you can see the full syntax of creating a table. But just to keep things simple and to get us up and running, I've done this. Okay, so if you look at this field schema, say this country string, right, name string, this is what we created. Now of particular interest is this location for us. We already saw that it's in the warehouse and department folder, so all the data will be picked up from there. Okay, now the input format, if people know MapReduce, the file that we supplied it will be a text input format. Okay, the data file will be a text input format, right? There are quite a few things in here which I wouldn't go into at the moment, but what you need to look at is this one, managed table. Okay, right? So a managed table, it is managed by Hive. All right. So just to complete this and run a query on this particular table and see how it works, let's just transfer some data. Okay. So if I do an ls in here, because I am inside module 2, and inside module 2 folder I started Hive from there. If I do an ls, it shows me what are the files that are available to me. So department.dat was available to me. Okay. So how do I ingest data for this particular table? We saw in the last session, the simplest one, we copy data. HDFS from the local file system, I want to copy. Hyphen copy from local. What do I want to copy? I want to copy dpt.dat, right? And what is the destination? Say destination, we know it is user Hive, and under department I need to copy that. So that's what we do. Say user slash Hive slash warehouse slash department, and under this I need to copy this file. So let me copy that. So it has been copied. Now just to check, you go into the name node and you navigate back. So I click on that again. So name node, browse file system, user, Hive, warehouse, under department, obviously you got department.dat. Okay. Uh, so that's what you have. Now let me run a quick query. Something that I would like you to think about is this. When I do a select star from dpt, what do you think should happen? We understood in our first session that a map reduce job will be run and stuff like that. But what will happen in this case? So pause this video for a second and try and reason what happens once I run this command. So it is just a selection from this department. So what does it have to do? What does Hive have to do? What is the best possible way to get data out of the system? As I explained in our previous session, any command in that we execute, Hive converts that command into map reduce job, and inside map reduce, how many mappers and how many reducers it has to create and run, it depends on that Hive engine. Okay, so it does the best possible job for us. Now when I do a select star from department, what should happen? How many mappers should run? How many reducers should run? This is what you should be asking yourself. So pause the video for a second. Obviously I wouldn't pause it, but I'll hit enter. So here you see no mappers and no reducers were run. Reason being simple, it is just dumping of data. Why should I run a mapper and reducer? Now if I do something else here, select star from department where department number equal to 1, probably now a mapper should run. See, there is no reduce task because all it is doing is filtering the data at the mapper itself. Okay, and reducer is not needed because we have not done any group by clause or anything. Okay, so for people who know map reduce, this is what is happening behind the scenes. Correct. So we just got our output. Department 1, said dictum limited, and that's the country. Okay, right. Now the next thing that we need to look at, as I said, describe extended department. What it did, it showed us information. Now this information means that at this place there is data. Okay, this is a managed table. Okay, so let me drop this table and see what happens. Okay, we can always recreate the table again. So I'll say drop table department. Now the table is dropped. I'll see how many tables are in there. Show tables. So only words is there, right? Let's look at Hive. So under warehouse, If you see under warehouse, the department table, the department folder has vanished. Now, when the department folder has vanished, it also means that the file that we copied, the data that we copied, this one, dept.dat, was also dropped. Now it's a problem, isn't it? Right? Why is it a problem? So let's have a quick, I'll draw a quick diagram. Okay. So what we saw here was I created a table called dept. And the moment that table was created, subsequently, under the warehouse folder, dpt folder was created. So that was step 1, and as a result of step 1, this happened. Okay. The next thing that we did is we ingested data. Okay. The way we ingested data is we picked up a file from local file system, which was dpt.dat, and we ingested it to this, we ingested the data to this location here. So it means this became available under this place, right? And then we ran some queries and we saw everything is working fine. The last thing that I did was I dropped the table. When I dropped department table, not only the schema information, the meta information vanished, but also along with that, this folder, this particular folder vanished. It means that department.dat, which was present under this particular folder, also vanished. It means I've lost all the data, right? So when I lose data, it could be that the data was ingested over a period of time and the data was deleted. Okay. Now when you lose data, obviously it's a very serious thing. You cannot lose data just like that. So ideally, when you drop the table, what should have happened is this meta information should have been dropped, but this folder and this data should have been available. Because look at this scenario. If two of you, so one is a MapReduce expert and you are a Hive expert, and both of you are looking at the same location, and you have dropped the table. So what you do is you have dropped this department. Now what happens to this developer here is also working in this department.dat. He cannot work anymore. Okay, right? So there has to be a solution. The solution is an external table. Okay, we'll look at external table in the next session, but this is food for thought. Okay, so what should happen is the meta information, the schema information should be dropped, but the data should not be dropped. Okay, so this should be available. Now in this case here, it's a managed table. It's a managed Hive thinks it is managing everything. So when it is a managed table, Hive looks at the entire data. So Hive drops the data when you drop a managed table. Okay, so that's the bottom line. Okay, now how do you create a managed table? It was simple. There was no big. If you create a simple table like this, create table department table, by default it is a managed table. Okay, So let's create this table again. Okay, now I'll just copy and paste this, right? So it has created a table, right? So that was the difference. So now this provides a foundation for the next video. Okay, so keep that in your head and let it go on in the background. Okay, all right. So now we saw what a table is. We saw the meta information. We saw extend. What we'll see next is how to alter a table. Right. Now, when you alter a table, you can rename a table. So alter table dpt, rename to dpt1. Okay. So that's been renamed. Show tables. So dpt1. Okay. Now